Rick Santorum may be getting all the focus in the mainstream media, but it's Ron Paul who is drawing the crowds. Let's take a look at a debate SOT from earlier today that demonstrates why Ron Paul is attracting so much support.
Entitlements are not rights. Rights mean you have a right. Rights mean you have a right to your life, and you have a right to your liberty, and you should have a right to keep the fruits of your labor. And this is quite a bit different. But earlier on, a little discussion here about gay rights. I, in a way, don't like to use those terms: gay rights, women's rights, minority rights, religious rights. There's only one type of right. It's your right to your liberty.
The right to your liberty. Senator Rand Paul, welcome to New Hampshire.
Thank you. Thank you.
Tomorrow I'm going to try to catch up with the congressman. He's been drawing so many people that you can't even get inside some of these halls. What is it about his message that is attracting people by the thousands?
Well, I think it's the fact that he's a consistent fiscal conservative, but he also believes in a little bit different foreign policy, one restrained by the Constitution, where we only go to war if Congress votes on a declaration of war, and there's some restraint that a war is not always the answer. We might have to go to war, but we only go to war when the people's house, when Congress votes on it. One person doesn't get to make that decision. That attracts young people. He has more contributions from active duty soldiers than all the other candidates combined. And I think that's really perplexing to some people, that they don't quite understand it. But people in the military are not monolithically wanting to go again and again and again. They will serve their country, but they also want there to be some rules and some understanding that it's not always the answer to go to war.
His economic message. I want to separate the economic from the foreign policy. Your reaction to the economic message. Go ahead.
What would your father do initially if he were elected president? What would be one of his first actions?
You know, he said he will balance the budget within 3 years. He's the only one saying that, and he would cut $1 trillion in spending. He would eliminate 5 departments. I think you can bank on that. He's voted against almost every appropriations bill in the last 20 years in Congress.
How is he going to get Congress to work with him to be able to do that? He can't be a dictator.
Yeah. No, I think he would completely agree with you. But I would say that the ultimate compromise that we take, and this is something we as Republicans will have to accept, is the spending is going to have to be cut across the board. He would go to liberals and he would say, I know you want to cut military spending, and we can cut some without impairing our national defense. Military spending has doubled in the last 10 years. There are many conservatives, myself, Tom Coburn, Jim DeMint, who have admitted we will have to cut some military spending. And he would go to the conservatives who have always been for cutting domestic spending. The compromise has to be conservatives and liberals coming together, and I think he has shown that he can work with people on both sides.
Do you agree with this? No. So some of you don't. Joanne.
As a voter, I would like to know what are the 5 things that he would eliminate.
As far as the departments, he's talked about the Department of Education, the Department of Commerce, the Department of Energy, the Department of the Interior, and Housing and Urban Development. Now, there would be a few things within those departments that he would slide into other departments, but the vast majority would end. But this also separates him. We just heard a candidate who says they are the Reagan conservative. Well, Reagan believed in eliminating the Department of Education. There's only one person who's standing up there and still is in favor of that. Ron Paul was one of only 4 congressmen to support Reagan over Gerald Ford. He's been doing it his whole career. So many want to be Reagan conservatives, but they're for Medicare Part D, the largest entitlement program of the last 20 years.
So let me ask you, you don't agree with this. Don't you want these cuts?
I agree. Yes. I agree, absolutely. We need to wake up and realize that we need to cut spending. There is nothing left for Social Security. I'm giving my paycheck away to a program that has failed. We need to get serious about these cuts.
In the back.
Yeah, I agree as well. I definitely think that we could definitely cut things from everything can be cut. We're always spending too much, and like the government's way too big right now.
Randy.
Yeah, nobody disagrees with his economic policy for the most part. It's everything else.
We'll get to that.
So far, all we've seen are Defense Department cuts, though. I mean, when are we going to get to entitlements?
Reaction?
Well, absolutely, we have to cut entitlements. Entitlements are 60% of the budget. In fact, if you take spending, all of the revenue that comes in goes towards entitlement and interest. 40% of every dollar is borrowed. We're borrowing $40,000 a second. So entitlements have to be addressed, military has to be addressed, domestic spending, but everything has to. You can't have something off the table.
Senator, watch this, though. How many of you agree with his foreign and defense policy? Raise your hands.
All right, we've got some work to do. We've got some work to do.
Give it your best shot.
Here's what I would say is that I think he's been misrepresented as far as foreign policy goes. The number one priority that Ron Paul believes in is national defense. He doesn't think the federal government should be doing most of the things they're doing, but he does think that they should be providing for our national defense. But once you say that, then we have to decide what is in our national defense. And so you have to decide where the money's going to be spent.
Back row.
If it comes across as misrepresented, that how can you change it? Because it comes across as isolationist, and it sounds so very 1800s.
Well, I'll give you an example on Iran. Iran's been a big issue, and people say, oh, well, he doesn't care if they get a nuclear weapon. Well, that misrepresents his position. He does care. He doesn't want them to have a nuclear weapon. But then the question is, can we contain Iran or must we go to war? And I'll give you an example of how mainstream his position is. The three previous heads of the U.S. Central Command, General Zinni, Abizaid, and Admiral Fallon, all say a preemptive attack could have repercussions that would actually hurt us and hurt Israel. The head of Israel's Mossad, Tamir Pardo, said this week, we need to quit saying it's an existential threat to Israel because we're trapping Israel into a cataclysmic war. There might be other answers. The Cuban Missile Crisis. Did we invade Russia? No, we blockaded Cuba. But eventually we negotiated, and we took missiles out of Turkey and out of Italy in order for Russia to take missiles out. Sometimes there could be a diplomatic solution. It doesn't always have to be war.
Did he get you?
No. Yes.
Well,
all right, let me keep trying.
No.
5 more minutes and I can get a few more.
And you're going to get 5 more minutes because when we come back, we're going to show the best out of the 2010 campaign, and we're all going to wish Senator Paul a happy birthday.
Thank you.
And then we've got some great ads to show you, the woman who would be First Lady of the United States of America, when we come back. Stay tuned.
Welcome to Idaho, where they grow American